the president that we have himself is an orphan. He was abandoned by his father. He was even abandoned by his stepfather.
Right.
And I think most of the people that voted for him have I will say this, of course I couldn't prove it, but I think there's a very good chance they did not have a very good relationship with their father. And they're in one sense or another, they're orphans. And so we're dealing with this mentality of an orphan whenever we're talking to them about what it would really be like to have a true father. And orphans have already been rejected. So this message of father is alarming. It's at least of some concern when they first hear that. And I think that's why sometimes we don't get a positive response to the message.
Interesting. Yes. You go on to say here that before Jesus has ascended, he said, all authority in heaven and earth had been given unto me. And go and make disciples. You know, he said, you go on to say, we have interpreted this commission to go and make disciples, to go and make converts.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, disciples are truly children, and they're being parented and they're growing up. It's much more than a simple prayer. So many people today think they've prayed a prayer and their problems are over. But I think that many of them are sadly misled. What else I could add to that?
No,
yeah, I think that there's another aspect to that too. Some people have prayed the prayer. This is the evangelicals. You know, the whole objective is to get people to pray the prayer and then declare to them that they're saved and they're going to go to heaven. I think you know, you've got another large group of people that they belong to the church. You know, and these are usually liturgical people, and they because they belong to the church, that it's the institution that will promote them into getting into heaven. If they've been faithful, if they've been good, they've been nice, whatever. And you know, both of these things are erroneous in their understanding. I mean, it's fine if you want to pray the prayer, and it's fine if you want to belong to the church, and that's not the issue. The issue is this personal, passionate relationship with Jesus Christ. If we don't have that kind of an understanding, if we don't have that kind of a relationship with Him, you know, the rest of it is just an intellectual understanding.
Right, right. Wow. Bob, you also go on to mention some statistics by Billy Graham. Can you elaborate on that? In the letter here, you talk about...
The Evangelistic Association says itself that out of every 10,000 people who make a decision for Christ in a crusade, you run them out about 10 years and there's only 500 left.
500 people out of 10,000? Out
of 10,000.
When you say left, you mean left as in actively pursuing their relationship with God?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Wow. So it goes back to what you said as far as what the definition of a disciples are. It's not about just standing in front of the masses or getting caught in a moment just saying a prayer, even though that may be the initial step or the beginning for most. Yes. But discipleship has to be there in place if that person is somehow going to mature.
Well, if we did this the other way around, again, if we go back to the scriptures and we do it instead of doing a crusade, which again, I have no complaint with a crusade.
Right.
But if we did it the way Jesus did, if we did it the way the scripture talks about, where, you know, one man disciples, say 12, you know, and maybe you lose one. You know,
there's a possibility.
The possibility where Jesus lost Judas, and Judas decided to do some things that weren't quite right. But I mean, here you got a situation where, you know, you've got 11, and then you've got the 12 when the other man was chosen, and that these people would disciple 12. Now you've got 12 discipling 12, and if those 12 discipled 12, I mean, you'd have a large number of disciples. And you know, I hear people say, "Well, the Crusades, it's worth it if one person gets saved." And yeah, I can't disagree with that. But if we did it the way Jesus did it, a whole lot more people would grow up and be mature.
Right.
And fewer of them would fall away.
Right. Exponential growth.
So again, getting back to the basics of this thing, getting back to the foundations, of what we really need to do, rather than to do things. I mean, crusades look good. I've been impressed with, crusades. There are a lot of people, and music and singing, and great preaching and that kind of thing. That really impressive. But as Bob points out here, that if it's really not going to result in the method that Jesus used, well, let's get back to the method that he used.
Yeah. It's interesting to note that doing it the way Jesus did it by the early 4th century, the Christian population had become about 10% of the total population of the Roman Empire. And it had become the only cohesive group of people in the empire with any integrity.
Wow. Wow. That speaks volumes.
Yes.
That's very good.
I'm going to go back here to the letter, something else you said that was pretty interesting. You said historically the church has thrived on the ignorance of people. When challenged, its leaders, even as they are passing, say it's the people that are the problem, not the system. Nevertheless, the present church will reinvent itself. But when it does, it will be even at a further distance from the truth. For instance, you go on to say, while the nation has progressed to a post-radical society, still the most segregated hour in American life is between 10 and 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. So people see the irrelevancy and have moved to distance themselves from it. Can you sum up what exactly you meant by this when you were sharing this part with George?
Well, I just think it's a marvelous illustration of the irrelevancy of the church. If somebody has a list, it's on the internet, of the 50 top sources of information and influence that affect people's lives, the church isn't in the top 50. It's not even in the top 100.
No.
So we really, I think what we're talking about today is really the answer. I think Lord is restoring fathers to the church, and it's going to make a very significant difference.
Wow.
Well, that's alarming. I didn't realize that. I mean, the church should be the group that's influencing society. I mean, isn't that what Jesus said we were to do?
Salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Yes, light of the world.
Yeah, city on a hill. If we're not in the top 100, we're certainly not a city on the hill.
You go on to say how Barna sort of said 70 million believers have left the institutional church. Now, Barna is a Christian
statistician and author.
Okay, statistician and author. Okay, and basically he does a lot of different studies.
He's sort of the George Gallup of the Christian world, or whatever.
Right. 70 million believers left the institutional church over the past 15 years, and he believes that 1 million a year will continue to leave.
Yeah, yes, they are.
Wow. Because of what we're sharing here today about their relevancy and not having the foundation of the Father's in Scripture.
Yes.
Wow. Again, the church will change, you say, but when it does, to the extent that it does, it will rush willy-nilly, helter-skelter, into a no consideration of Scripture. The Episcopal Church in the United States is a good recent example of rushing to embrace the homosexuality by appointing a homosexual bishop in New Hampshire, to try to demonstrate its acceptability and in tune with the times to the nation at large. This is because the current church doesn't understand Scripture. It's steeped in culture, and as the culture moves on, however, and the church fails to stay in step. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, it's just, it's going to try to keep in step, it's going to try to keep changing, it's going to try to catch up, but it's just never going to quite get there. And I came across a very interesting vision that Mike Bickle had in 1996. It was in a book that he'd written entitled Growing in the Prophetic, that I'd like us to share.